Vegas Raiders, and this is a wild one. Sources tell me and colleague Tom Pelissero that the Raiders have now agreed to terms with their new head coach, and it's Pete Carroll. Pete Carroll, the new head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. The deal is now expected to be finalized. He has been.
And welcome everybody to the glorious episode of Put on Raiders podcast. The Raiders got me pulled over on the street over here because they could have done it last night when we were filming the show, but we didn't do it. But they didn't do it then. Pete Carroll, former SC coach, former Jet coach, former Seahawks coach, is now the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. Just kind of a quick synopsis of what we think about it. What do you think about the move the Raiders just made here?
Yeah, we touched on this a little bit yesterday, but they're bringing in a winning head coach who's won a Super Bowl. He's also won a national championship at the college level. He's never lost one, or his worst season in Seattle was 7 wins. So they're bringing in a guy who can set the culture. I think for me, it comes down to what's the staff look like, who's the offensive coordinator, and how quickly can they get this going, because Pete Carroll's only going to be around for 3 or 4 years. I mean, this guy's not going to be coaching into his 80s. He'll be 74 when the season starts. He'll already be the oldest head coach in NFL history when he coaches the Raiders opening game next year. So this it's a big fit, or I'm sorry, it's a big challenge here for Pete Carroll to get this thing up and running quickly. He doesn't have time to slow play this and build it over the next 3 or 4 years. They got to get up to speed quickly, and they got to start competing by hopefully by 2026 at the latest, because that window is short for Pete Carroll due to his age. So I like the fit. I'm okay with it, but again, like I said, it's going to come down to the coordinators. Wouldn't have been my first choice, but I understand why the Raiders did this.
It does make it does make some sense when you break it down. Look at it like when he came back into. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. When he came to Seattle, John Schneider was a young up and coming GM. So now and he worked with Pete Carroll, and they worked in concert together. Maybe you have that same situation here. 3-year deal with the option for a fourth. So obviously, if it's going well, they might want to renew him for the fourth. He'll be close to 80. But I mean, listen, he's not your everyday 74-year-old male. I definitely get that. Somebody just tweeted out the other day, I don't want anybody fat talking about Pete Carroll or talking trash on Pete Carroll's age or whatever. He is fit. He's in shape. He has a lot of energy. We know that his enthusiasm is infectious. But now we're in a situation where he's built some programs. Seattle, USC. We know about that. We just got to see if he can do it one more time. And we all talked about it. I think everybody's pretty much okay with it, but who are the coordinators? Like, what kind of style are we going to be running? I mean, can he steal somebody from the Rams tree? It seems like those guys don't even need the experience of calling plays. I mean, they come in the league and they end up starting calling plays, and they start making the teams kind of hit the ground running offensively. So, like the move. I mean, like I said, I would have, probably, it seemed like I could have waited, but I mean, for them, it's like if your pecking order was Ben Johnson and Carroll, sign Carroll, get it done, get your team ready to go, and then and take it from there.
Yeah, just look at his history of coordinators and this whole idea and of them having a successor on staff, the coach in waiting, the young mentor
No,
to groom. Throw that out the window. You hired Pete Carroll to do what Pete Carroll does over the next 3 or 4 years. This is not going to roll into a 10 or 15 years down the line where this same group's going to stay together even when Pete Carroll leaves. If I just went through his list, like they did try it. He did go to the Rams tree with Shane Waldron. That didn't work out for the last 3 years. But if you look at his history in Seattle, he went Jeremy Bates. He stayed with Darrell Bevel way too long. Darrell Bevel was there from 11 to 17. Then he had Brian Schottenheimer for 3 years, Shane Waldron for 3 years. And on the defensive side, it kind of got worse as he was there longer too. He went from Gus Bradley to Dan Quinn. Dan Quinn's really the only one on this list that left and became a successful head coach. Then he went Chris Richard for 3 years, Ken Norton for 4 years, and then Clint Hurt for 2 years. So um, I get the idea that you want to pair him up with all these young dynamic coaches, but in reality, that's not what he's really done in his career when he's gone out and looked for assistants, especially when you look at the second half of his tenure in Seattle. So hopefully that he does that. I wouldn't put all my eggs in the basket that then when the Raiders decide to move on from Pete Carroll, or he decides to step away for one reason or another, that the next coach is just going to be magically on staff. That would be a bonus. I would love for that to happen. I'm going to act like that's not going to happen because I don't think whoever he hires is going to be the next McVay or Shanahan or Ben Johnson or these up and coming coaches that teams want to target. Hopefully, he can get the Raiders into a position where they build the roster, they get a quarterback, they start winning, they can get to 9, 10 wins and then hand it off to the next guy, kind of like what happened in Seattle with Mike McDonald coming in from the Ravens and just pick
Yeah.
it up and keep going with it. So the idea that they're going to compete and get into the playoffs and make runs in the next 3 or 4 years, and they're going to have this fabulous coach on staff that they're just going to magically promote in 4 years, that's all hyperbole. That's not going to happen. So take Pete Carroll for what he is. Hope he can turn this around in the next 3 or 4 years and put it in a position where they can go out and actually attract a much better, much younger coach. And the only way he's really going to do that is they have to figure out the quarterback position.
Yeah, and I think too, because I'm trying to stay on the positive side of it, because I mean, AP was in over his head, but we have a guy now who is won in numerous places, and in college football and in pro football, but he also has done some things with the quarterback. He raised Russell Wilson to be a good quarterback. He knew when it was time to move on from Russell Wilson, as well, because I mean I think everybody was in shock when they moved on from Russell Wilson, and then they ended up playing Geno Smith. Geno Smith has not been. Everybody thought that was going to be a disaster. It hasn't been a disaster. He hasn't been a top flight, NFL superstar quarterback, but he's been in the middle of the pack. I think he threw for more yards than any other quarterback in the league this year. If I check, I think he had back-to-back 4,000-yard seasons. So, I mean, like they are like he does know how to build a team, and like they're probably. I mean, it's about running. It's about playing defense, running the football, and just having that enthusiasm, that getting that teamwork together. His teams always love playing together. But at some point, it does kind of does go stale, and I think that's why Seattle got out when they did.
I think this is big for Max Crosby because you heard Max Crosby talk about setting the culture, wanting to win, and he specifically mentioned Pete Carroll as being a guy who can do that on one of his. I don't know if it was when he was on his podcast or he was talking on Sirius Radio with Jim Gray, but recently there was a piece where he was excited about the potential of bringing in Pete Carroll. So that's good. If Geno Smith, I know a lot of people are saying Russell Wilson could reunite in Vegas. I do not want to see that happen. I actually would prefer them making a move for Geno Smith. If you're looking for that quarterback in transition, not that Geno Smith is all world, but in the last 2 years, in 22 and 23 under Pete Carroll, as you mentioned, he went to the Pro Bowl twice. And he threw in 2022, Geno Smith had a 70% completion percentage, threw 30 touchdowns, and had 11 interceptions under Pete Carroll. And then the second year there was 65%, 3,600 yards, 20 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Threw 15 interceptions last year, but that wasn't under Pete Carroll. So, but he did complete 70% of his passes. If you're looking for a veteran to come in, and Seattle doesn't seem to be too enamored with him. They tried to move on last year.
Yep.
There's not, they can get out of that contract pretty easily. He's going to be in the last year of his deal. So maybe Seattle with Mike McDonald wants to go in a different direction at quarterback, and then you can bring in Geno Smith for a year or two to help groom whoever they come in. Geno Smith will be 34 next year. So I know he's older, but if the Raiders want to compete and try to turn this thing around and try to get to 8, 9 wins in Pete Carroll's first season, Geno Smith isn't a terrible option. Now it's going to take capital to trade for him, and you're going to have to give him a contract extension for probably 2 or 3 years. But there are worse options out on the market, but I'm not going to act like Geno Smith's the savior. Like I still want them to go draft a quarterback and groom someone under him as well.
Yeah, 100%. Like I don't care I mean, I mean, I'm just like you. I don't want Russell either. But if they bring Russell, they bring Geno in. If they bring one of those guys in, that's fine. Do that. I'm a-okay with it. Just we gotta have a draft of a quarterback. Like you have to have a plan in place. We can't just be like, okay, it's Geno. Let's go spend $80 million. I mean, use all our cap, our cap, our salary cap to go get a kind of a team that's ready to go try to win now. I'm with like being competitive next year. I understand like there's next year's draft potentially for quarterbacks could be better than this one. But we say that without knowing who's actually going to come out. I would say just give me a veteran and give me a draft. Like this is the worst offensive backfield probably in the history of the Raiders. We've had bad quarterbacks, but we've always had at least decent running backs. Like this is really bad. Like I mean, this offensive backfield is horrible. They probably need two quarterbacks. They probably need to draft two running backs. Like it's really that dire. So get a veteran, draft a quarterback, get a veteran running back, and then maybe draft a couple of running backs in this draft because this draft is really deep in the backfield. So if they can do those things and obviously they have a lot of money to kind of fix the offensive line where they have little holes, then I mean at least they can run the football, throw the football down the field. I know Metcalf is a guy who's not happy in Seattle. Could he be happy to come and play with they can play with Pete and be that second or second option to take some pressure off of Brock Bowers. That could be something as well too. So a lot of moving parts here with the Raiders.
Again, I know the Raider fans want to talk about DK Metcalf or T. Higgins or going out and getting these wide receivers. Those wide receivers are not going to come to Las Vegas if there's no quarterback to throw them the football. They're going to go to
100%.
opportunities where they have better options. So first and foremost, they got to fix that. I don't want to hear the name Ken Norton Jr. I don't want to hear the name Daryl Bevel. I don't want to hear the name Gus Bradley. The Raiders need to go in a different direction. Pete kind of sold the Raiders from what I've seen on his ability to get them through the transition is the word that they use. So that to me sounds like they're going to play a lot of younger guys, like I talked about on the podcast last night. Build this thing through the draft. Use John Spytek and his ability to identify talent and build this thing up. They need to do whatever they can do to get the quarterback, but build this thing up over the next couple years. Get a lot of young guys in there, play them. Which is what they need to do. Take a long-term view. I know it's a short term with the new coach, but like they still need to take a long-term view and build this thing right. So when he is ready to hand this
Yeah.
off, that this team can compete and be a 9-10 win team in the first season of whoever the next coach is going to be.
Yeah, of course, right there. So, like I said, this is a quick podcast. This is an emergency one because the Raiders getting a new head coach is worthy of that. And I'm sure when we get to our regular show, we're going to get more in depth in that. You have anything before we go?
Yeah, I just want to say there's only one team in the AFC West whose coach has not won a Super Bowl. It's not the Raiders.
I mean, that is true. That is true. Everybody's going to use that line until season starts. Obviously Harbaugh and him. How old is Harbaugh anyway? How old is Harbaugh? Is
I don't know.
Harbaugh?
It's January. We're allowed to poke fun at the Chargers.
Yeah, that's fine.
John Harbaugh is 60. He'll be 63 in September next
This
year.
is
So 62 right now.
September. So yeah, so we'll see. So listen, new head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders is Pete Carroll. We'll talk about it a little bit more in depth about the staff and what's next for the Raiders in the upcoming weeks. So you guys take care and go Raiders as always.
All right, take care.
Take care.